Hi, my name is Laura Kastner. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm a clinical professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences, as well as the psychology department at the University of Washington. I've written several books, but I'm delighted to introduce my new book, Getting to Calm the Early Years, Cool-Headed Strategies for Raising Happy, Caring, and Independent 3 to 7-year-olds. I really wanted to write this book because I love writing about teenagers and working with teenagers, but I have been working with toddlers and young children for decades also, and it's wonderful to get a head start on all of the skills that you want to build with your competent 3 to 7-year-old. Well, we can talk about this at several levels: prevention, early intervention, and damage control. So with regard to prevention, it's really important to remember that there's nothing more important than maintaining a secure and positive, loving, affectionate, attuned relationship and providing for their developmental needs. And when we say that, we don't mean like make sure they're happy all the time, because you can't. Sometimes we're not going to meet their needs. They're going to be pushing our limits and they're going to have a tantrum, so we have to deal with that. But if you give them what they need with regard to the relationship strength, much less likely to have tantrums. Now, the next thing to remember is to catch them when they're good, which means paying attention to them when they're having desirable behaviors. Another part of it is to have realistic expectations. I love writing about the 3 to 7-year-old because they're very challenging years, and it's very, very normal to have tantrums because they don't like to follow our program. So they will tantrum, and some kids tantrum a lot because they have more exuberant personalities and temperaments, and so we need to plan ahead. Some situations are just inherently trying, so we need to be prepared, plan ahead. You know, if they're in a long commute or their sister's basketball game, we need to take the extra bag of toys so that we can keep them engaged, and maybe talk to them ahead of time about what's expected of them, or maybe have them chime in of what they need. Another important realm is early intervention. I use this system with the kids in my practice with parents: yellow, orange, red. Yellow, they're starting to get a little irritated. Orange, they're starting to get very distressed. And by the time they're in the red zone, we're probably going to be doing the damage control. So let's say brother wants to go into sister's bedroom. She doesn't want to play with him. He's getting kind of frustrated. He's starting to whine. Rather than just saying don't whine or just deal with it, your sister doesn't want to play, really validate their feelings. Oh, you're frustrated. This is an opportunity to build emotional intelligence. As we say, putting feelings into words. And so by saying, oh, you're really mad, or you're really sad, and tell me more about that, and getting them to express their feelings allows them to literally move some of their neural activation from their limbic system, their emotional systems, into their left hemisphere and their thinking brain, so they can start to articulate. And once they can say, I'm mad about this, I'm sad about sister not letting me play with her, they can start to problem solve with you. So now we're down to red zone. So they're distressed, they're starting to scream and yell and melt down. And at that point, it's really important to remember, don't threaten, don't bribe, don't try to talk them out of their feelings, don't try to reason with them. If they're truly out of control, they're completely dysregulated, they will not be able to reason themselves out of it. You really need to just wait until their dysregulated emotions go from 100 beats a minute or over, and settle down and really calm yourself. Another reason to get to calm is that you can't fix it then. You're going to have to wait until they come off that peak, and it's very unhelpful to say things like calm down or get yourself under control. Better to say, oh, I know you're upset, or maybe not talk at all, because all talk is stimulating and can arouse them worse. Wait till they come down. Say self-soothing things to yourself, like very important one is, my child is doing the best she can given her emotional state. Or don't just do something, stand there. Or what goes up must come down. Just soothing things so that you don't make it worse. Almost anything you say can make that red zone worse. So once they come off the red zone part, back into orange, back into yellow, you can start having them put feelings into words and try to get into a problem-solving mode. I've co-authored 2 previous books for this series. for parents of tweens and teens about the subjects of getting to calm and wise-minded parenting. And I wanted to take those themes, very important themes for parenting, and apply them to the material that's available on parenting the 3 to 7-year-old. So I take the best of those themes and apply them to this age group. I'm going to talk about 3 different parts of this. One is getting to calm and why that's so important, and then why it's very helpful to know the information and available research in the field, and then how you apply it to your own family. First, an acronym that I created for that first book was CALM, C-A-L-M, which stands for first, when you're very upset with your child and facing a very challenging situation, it's important to cool down. When you're flooding and your heart rate is over 100 beats a minute, you can't think straight. You might yell, you might scream, you might shut down. So first, regulate your own physiology. Cool down. The second, A, for assess your options. What are your options? What are the pros and cons to dealing with it now, waiting till your spouse is at home, taking one approach over another? Just the mere thought of this evaluative process allows people to sort of start to shoot off some neurons in the prefrontal cortex and make better decisions. The third, L, for listen with empathy. First, when we reconnect with our child after a difficult situation, we want to be empathic, think about things from their point of view. What's it like for that 3-year-old for mom to say no to the second cookie? What's it like for that child to have a difficult situation at school? The fourth one is make a plan, and that is what's going to be the best strategy. So in deciding what the best strategy is, it's good to know the research. There's a lot of research out there to help you decide, what approach should I take and what new challenge should I take on with my 3-year-old or 5-year-old or whatever. And the third part is the wise-minded part. You know, after you've taken all that information, you really have to decide what's right for you. You know, most parents know more than they think they do, and even after they read about 16 ways you can help get your kid to sleep, you have to decide what's right for you right now. And so you want to develop your intuition, work with your partner if you have one, and really decide what's best for me. And that's the wise-minded part. You put your best thinking skills with your emotional skills and come up with what's right for you. It's very important to think a lot about the role of technology in your home. And for that I have a little acronym, TECH, T-E-C-H. T for take time to learn it, E for exercise control over it, C, consider tracking and filters and turn off settings, and H, harness the best and limit the rest. So let's take one at a time. First, take time to learn about it. Before any child of 3 to 7 is exposed to any technology, and I even mean a TV, or any gadget at all, parents should learn about it. There's, of course, paradoxically, a lot on the web. They can use technology to learn about technology, but don't let your kid be exposed to anything until you've researched it, because anytime you get a smartphone or any kind of laptop, you are entering a whole different realm, and they get into stuff before you know it. Now the second part is have controls over it. These gadgets are very powerful, very rewarding, and once they get access, they'll want as much as they can. So the minute you introduce it, start having rules. When do you get it? When do we turn it off? What happens if you don't turn it off? If I ask you to turn it off, are you allowed to have it at what time of day? Not at the dinner table. Parents want to consider having controls on their own use of gadgets at the dinner table, and so forth. Thirdly, consider these filters and so forth. A lot of people say, I just don't know about that stuff. And I say, learn about it, ask your friend, or hire it out. But you need to have filters the minute they get exposed to computers. Very powerful goodie this is. And once they start in, it's very hard to put the genie back in the bottle. Kids get into illicit material before you know it, whether you like it or not. I'm not one of those people that demonize technology. Technology is wonderful, and everything good you've heard about it, building critical learning skills and spatial skills and even self-regulation, because you have to actually control yourself to play a game with others. So it can be marvelous. However, we have to remember, this is the most powerful source of dopamine in your life, a child's life probably. Dopamine is the neurochemical associated with pleasure in our brain, and once it starts getting released and our brain learns what we like, whether it's chocolate or, you know, ESPN or, you know, a certain game, they want it, they want it, they want it, and parents fight. It's one of the highest sources of conflict in homes, is fighting about that gadget. So as wonderful as it is, we need to really know how powerful it is, because when they put in too many hours of that, they're not going to have enough hours with play, FaceTime, developing empathy, developing social and emotional skills. So it can be very costly to go down that pike and not have controls. First, we need to remember that the word discipline comes from the Latin root discere, which means to learn or to teach. Most of what we do as parents is maintain a wonderful relationship with them so they can tolerate how much we have to teach them. So as you see with the striped wedge there, that's where we are trying to encourage positive behaviors and new behaviors with praise, encouragement, maybe a reward chart for doing all their little duties in the morning so that we just don't hassle and badger and fight about it. So that incentivizes some of the pro-social behaviors that we want to develop as well. And then with the polka dotted one, that's where we get into things like routines and rules and things that we do every day that relate to good habits. It's underrated how important routines are that we do every day the same way, because once they do it in an automatic pilot way, their brain is actually not taking up space making decisions. It just goes into automatic pilot. I do my brushing teeth, I get my school stuff together, I make my bed, and so forth. Okay, now finally we get to that dark solid piece. Look how small that wedge is, because really punishment, which often gets confused with discipline, should be a tiny sliver of what we do. Obviously, if they break a rule, there'll be a consequence. And of course, ideally, we use a lot of logical and natural consequences. The natural consequence of losing your sweatshirt or losing your skateboard because you left it on the driveway is you don't have one. Mommy and Daddy don't buy a new one. They have to earn it, or they wait for a next birthday. The natural consequence of learning that we have to take care of our belongings is we have the little pinch of, oh, I'm going to miss that thing, and it builds in the motivation to be responsible. Punishment is a very small part of what we do, but if we don't sort of think ahead and have a whole system of how we're going to parent in a very serious and proactive and thoughtful way, we end up threatening or yelling or meting out punishments because we really haven't thought through the rest of those wedges that are so important. None of the discipline works unless it's in the context of a mostly positive, loving, reliable relationship with mom and dad.